Victor Calise became the New York City Commissioner for People with Disabilities in June 2012. He functions as a key liaison between the city's 800,000 citizens with disabilities and the city government. His office has spurred initiatives to improve transportation accessibility and employment training for the disabled. Guest interviewer Charles A. Archer recently met with the commissioner at his office.
Hi, this is Charles Archer. I have the opportunity today to have a conversation with Commissioner Victor Calise from the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities.
Got that
Welcome,
right.
Commissioner. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
So then what does your office do for people with disabilities?
I often think about that every day. And what we do is we advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. We are the principal liaison between the mayor and the disabled community. And we're there to work with city agencies so they understand what it's like to deal with people with disabilities, what programs and services they need to provide because they're obligated under the Americans with Disabilities Act, what projects they have to do, what things they need to do to make things accessible. For instance, working with the Parks Department, we make sure that the parks and playgrounds are accessible. If we're working with the Department of Transportation, we're making sure that curb cuts and audio pedestrian signals are put in. If we're working with the Taxi and Limousine Commission, we want to make sure that taxis are accessible for people with disabilities. And that goes it goes across every agency here in New York City.
Transportation accessibility is a key concern for the Commissioner's office.
Here in New York City, one of the most recent accomplishments for your office was the Taxi and Limousine Commission arrangement to have more accessible taxis. Tell me a little bit about that.
That's something that here in city government we've been working on for some time, and disabled advocates had a big play in this as well. It was simple. Make cabs accessible for people with disabilities. Well, if we step back and we think about accessible transportation, it really started here in New York City back in the 80s with Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association at the time advocating for buses to be accessible. And eventually 100% of the buses became accessible, which is great, right? Yes. So the United Spinal Association, Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association eventually changed their name over to United Spinal, and also were part of working to make cabs accessible here in New York City. So it was a long, drawn-out process, but in the end, we're going to get 50% cabs accessible by the year 2020. That's extraordinary. Yes. And that's something that disabled advocates are looking forward to. It's something our office has been working on with city agencies for a pretty long time. And it's great to see it actually going to happen. And there's more cabs on the street today, and eventually people with disabilities will have the ability to hail a cab, just like everyone else.
With that accomplishment, there has been over the years some controversy about accessible elevators for subway stations and the mobility issues within that. Tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
Trains are difficult to navigate. Now, I've been around other parts of the world. I've been to London, I've been to Spain, I've been to China, so understanding what their subway systems are like too, because you always want to get a model, right? And if we look at places like Washington, D.C., their subways are 100% accessible because they're rather new.
Right.
And here in New York City, we have a pretty old system, in same way that London does. Right. London has done a great job in making their subways accessible, and mostly the newer parts. When you get to the center of London, it's very difficult because the subway's so deep and it's hard to get to. But on the outskirts of London, you're able to get around in accessible subways, which are great. Right. It's the same thing here in New York City. We have an old system, and we really have to think about how we're going to make it better. By 2020, there will be 100 key stations available. Right now, we're at 82. So we've got a little bit more to go. And that'll be helpful. But the MTA is always thinking and trying to think, because we work with the MTA and we're trying to figure out ways to get more elevators in. So when they're doing capital projects, they're installing them. And the 2nd Avenue subway line, the first phase will be done by 2016, and that's going to provide all accessible.
That's almost around the corner, actually.
Right around the corner, and all of those stops will be accessible on the 2nd Avenue because it's new construction. Right. The extension of the 7 line will be the same thing. They're all going to be accessible. So as we move forward and start adding newer subways systems and expanding those lines, they will be accessible because they have to be under the ADA. The problem is getting to the old system, right? And maintenance on the elevators are an issue. how do you get there? Maintenance and operations and dollars set aside. So it's something that the MTA I know is conscious of. It's a matter of the disabled advocates pushing them to do it, and that's where it is. If people aren't involved in the process, you can't get it done correctly.
Having worked in disabilities for 22 years, one thing I think would be really exciting, and I'm just going to put it out there. I know we see that the city bikes are around, but there are people with disabilities that want to be able to do that as well, and not necessarily just worry about safety, but worry about the opportunity to experience things that they see their neighbors experience.
Yeah, funny you should say that. We've been exploring some things with the Department of Transportation and seeing what can be done for that. Being able to have tricycles for the aging population, right? That'd be great. Being able to have tandem bikes for people with visual disabilities. So these are some things that we're thinking about. It's a matter of how do we plan and implement, because the system needs to adapt to these bicycles as well, and we also need to be able to have enough of those bicycles around to be able to do that, because transportation, it's another form of transportation, isn't it?
Disability Mentoring Day promotes career development for people with disabilities.
Tell me a little bit about the Disability Mentoring Day.
Disability Mentoring Day. It's a great program. It's a one-day job shadowing experience that a person with a disability can sign up for. And what does that mean? We ask people with disabilities, what they're interested in. We have a large sheet and format for people to fill out and understand, and we find out where they want to be placed and what job. So a person might want to be in city government, some may want to be in banking. So what we do is we get them in our office, we look at their application, we find out where their holes are, we teach people how to write a resume, how to interview for an interview, how to dress for an interview, how to network. And those are workshops that we set up. And through those workshops, we get them job ready. And that's important. We don't want to send a person with a disability in with no experience. We want to figure out what we need to do to get that person job ready. And then once we get them job ready, we get them into the workforce. And they shadow someone in the field of their choice. Now, it's not a way for them to get a job, but it is a way for them to understand where they may or may not want to be. Right? They can get familiar with the workplace, and they can build a relationship with the people that they're mentoring. And that's important.
Do you feel that the corporate entities or the business community is receptive to working not just with your office, but with people with disabilities as a whole?
Yes. There are a lot of great things that we're starting to see. More and more companies want to get involved with our Disability Mentoring Day, because they see the value in it, and they see the value of bringing diversity to their workforce. So we're starting to see it. We want them to hire more people, and that's our goal. But that's going to take some time for lots of different reasons. Right? You got to break down those barriers that exist and have people believe in disability and show that person with a disability can do the same thing you are. You might just need a little bit more help, and if you give them that little more help, what are they going to do? They're going to be reliable employees. They're going to be the people that are going to show up all the time, right? and they're going to give you 100% of their work ethic, because that's what a person does, and a person with a disability can do the same thing.
The Commissioner's Office works closely with other city agencies and with the mayor.
How do you work alongside other commissioners? For instance, Commissioner on Education, where people with disabilities are in public schools or in university life. How do you deal with commissioners in other areas in order to make sure that this is something that's on their forefront?
It's a matter of letting them know it needs to be on their forefront. If they don't know that the issues exist, how are they going to address it? So it's an education process on every front. The commissioners that I've been in touch with, I know that the Department of Transportation Commissioner and Department of Design and Construction Commissioner, these are people that really get it and understand it, and we work with them and let them know what our needs and wants are, so they can address it in their daily operations. So we do it a lot, and the commissioners are really understanding. They know that they need to do things, and they know they need to comply, and most of all, they know the human factor of it, because at any point, at any time, anyone become disabled.
Absolutely.
Right? You'll either become disabled, you'll be temporarily disabled, or you'll know someone. So it'll affect your life in some way, shape, or form. So what I tell them is, you're building for your future.
That's actually a good one. I might steal that one and use it as well. How is it working with our new mayor?
Working with the new mayor has been great. His initiatives have been broad and fast sweeping. He talks about vulnerable populations and removing people with disabilities into that conversation. So he's very progressive. We believe our agenda is progressive with it, so it fits that well, and people with disabilities fit right into his agenda.
Commissioner, what is your vision and mission for New York City?
Well, we are the greatest city in the world, as you mentioned. I want to make New York City the most accessible city in the world.